Look at me. Stay with me, please. Don't you dare close your eyes.
Rain came down in heavy sheets, each drop cold enough to sting as it exploded against Mia's skin. The rooftop beneath her feet was slick, trembling under the weight of the storm, creaking as if it too feared what was about to happen. The city spread out below her in blurred lights and moving shadows, a glowing world she wasn't sure she would live to see again. Her chest rose and fell in frantic bursts as she backed away, one step at a time, her heart pounding loud enough to drown out even the thunder. Jason stood in front of her, his once soft smile twisted into something sharp, mocking, cruel. The man she used to love, the man she had trusted with her secrets and fears, now looked at her with a strange hunger she didn't understand. His clothes were drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, but he didn't seem to feel the cold. His eyes burned with obsession, with a possessiveness that made her stomach tighten in dread. "You should have listened, Mia," he said, his voice too calm for a night like this. "You should have stayed with me." She swallowed hard, forcing her voice to work even as fear wrapped around her throat. "Jason, please, you're not thinking straight. We can talk about this. Let's just go downstairs. Let's leave the roof. You're scaring me." "Good," he replied, a smile flickering across his lips. "You should be scared. Maybe then you'd stop trying to run." A gust of wind pushed her hair into her eyes as she stepped back again, feeling the rough concrete suddenly end beneath her heel. Her breath hitched. She was dangerously close to the edge now, close enough that one wrong step would send her falling into the void. Jason saw the panic flash across her face, and his smile widened. He took another step forward with slow, deliberate confidence, like a predator savoring the fear of prey cornered with nowhere left to flee. "You made me do this, Mia. You pushed me to this point," he continued, his voice rising slightly. "I loved you. I gave you everything. And you threw it away like I was nothing." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for a brief second. The bitterness carved into his expression felt like a stranger wearing the face of someone she once adored. He wasn't the Jason she had met at the bookstore 2 years ago. He wasn't the man who used to leave flowers on her doorstep or make her laugh until her stomach hurt. That Jason had been a lie, a mask hiding the darkness that now stood in front of her. "I didn't throw anything away," she whispered, hugging her trembling arms around herself. "I left because I was scared. Because you hurt me. Because you became someone I couldn't recognize anymore." Jason's jaw clenched at her words. Another step. Another inch stolen from the shrinking space between them. "I became someone better for you, Mia. Stronger. Once I realized how weak I was without you, I fixed it. I fixed myself. But you couldn't see that. You kept pushing me away. You never appreciated what I did for us." Rain slid down her eyelashes, blurring her vision as she shook her head. "That's not love, Jason. That's control. You wanted to own me. You followed me. You threatened the people I cared about. You made me feel like I was suffocating. I had to leave." His eyes twitched dangerously, a hint of madness she had tried to deny for months now. The rooftop groaned again under a fierce gust of wind, and Mia felt the very edge scrape the back of her shoe. Her pulse skittered wildly. Jason's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "If I can't have you, no one will." Her lungs froze. The words echoed through the storm, cruel and absolute. She lifted her hands slightly in an attempt to calm him, but her fingers shook too badly to mean anything. "Jason, listen to me," she begged. "You don't want to do this. I know you don't. You're hurting, I get that. But this isn't the way. You can get help. We can both walk away from here. You don't want my death on your hands. You don't want to live with that." He laughed. It was short and hollow, a sound that didn't belong to the man she had once loved. "You think I care about that? All I care about is making sure you stop running. You belong to me, Mia. You always did." She stepped sideways, but her foot slipped on the wet ledge, and her arms flailed for balance. Jason lunged forward, not to save her, she realized that instantly, but to push her the rest of the way. Terror clawed up her throat as she felt his hands slam into her shoulders with brutal force. For a split second, her heart stopped. She was falling. Wind roared past her ears, her stomach lurched, her scream was ripped from her throat before it could even form. The rooftop vanished above her as the world spun violently, the lights of the city twisting into streaks of gold and blue. Her hand reached out instinctively, grasping for anything, for something, for a miracle that wasn't coming. The cold air swallowed her. Her life flashed in pieces, her mother's smile, her best friend's laugh, her favorite books, her first kiss, the nights she cried quietly so no one could hear, the moments she doubted she deserved better than Jason. She wondered if anyone would miss her. She wondered if anyone would even know what happened. Then a voice cut through the storm like a blade. A voice deep, powerful, commanding, echoing with rage and something else she couldn't name. Mia. It wasn't Jason's voice. Before she could process anything, before her mind could catch up to the shock spreading through her body, a hand shot out of the darkness above. A hand large, strong, and impossibly fast closed around her wrist with a grip so fierce it jolted her entire body. Pain shot up her arm. Her heart slammed into her ribs. The fall stopped abruptly as her body jerked in midair. Rain splashed against her face as she dangled helplessly, staring up at the man holding her with unwavering strength. She recognized his face instantly. Dante Romano. The Mafia boss whose name made men tremble. The shadow rumored to control half the city. A man feared, respected, whispered about. A man she had met only once by accident, a brief encounter that left a strange impression she never understood. Now he was the only thing keeping her alive. His soaked hair clung to his forehead, his jaw clenched with fury, and his dark eyes burned. Not with hatred, but with something fierce and protective that stole the breath from her lungs. "I've got you," he growled, tightening his hold even as the rain tried to pull them apart. "I'm not letting you go." Her fingers closed around his wrist desperately, tears mixing with the rain. She didn't know how he got here. She didn't know why he came. But in that moment, nothing mattered except the truth burning in his eyes. He came for her, and he was determined to save her. No matter the cost. The rain lashed harder as Dante's grip tightened around Mia's wrist, his muscles straining against the weight of her body. For a second, she thought his hand might slip, that the water and the storm and gravity would win. But Dante wasn't an ordinary man, and the look in his eyes made it clear he would fight the whole world before letting her fall. With a guttural sound of effort, he shifted his stance, bracing his boots against the slick rooftop and pulling her upward inch by inch. Her body banged against the side of the concrete ledge as she struggled to help him, her free hand reaching for anything solid. He gave one final powerful pull, and Mia's body flew over the edge into his arms, collapsing against his chest. Her breath came in shuddering gasps. For a moment she couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't comprehend the fact that she was alive. Dante held her against him with both arms, one around her waist and the other cradling the back of her head, as if even the storm might try to steal her away again. His chest rose and fell, not from fear but from adrenaline and fury. The heat of his body against her cold, soaked skin made her realize how violently she was shaking. She lifted her head slowly and met his eyes. They were darker than the night, burning with intensity, scanning her face as if checking for injuries, as if making sure she was real. Rain dripped down his jaw, tracing the sharp lines of his face. He didn't look like the ruthless criminal the world whispered about. He looked like a man barely holding himself back from tearing the world apart for what almost happened to her. "Are you hurt?" he asked, and his voice was lower, rougher than she remembered. There was a raw edge to it, as if something inside him was fraying. Mia shook her head, though she wasn't sure. Her whole body hurt. Her mind felt like it was unraveling. Her throat constricted as she tried to speak. I don't know." He exhaled slowly, his hand sliding from her head to her cheek, wiping away a streak of rain as if it were a tear he refused to let fall. "You're safe now." Safe. It was a word she hadn't felt in a long time. Her moment of fragile calm shattered when Jason's voice cut through the rain from behind Dante. "You've got to be kidding me. You think you can take her?" Dante's entire body tensed. The arm around Mia tightened protectively before he gently but firmly moved her behind him. She stumbled back a step, her heart thundering against her ribs as Dante placed himself between her and Jason like a barrier no one on earth could break. Jason's face twisted with jealousy, rage, and disbelief. His soaked clothes clung to him, and his chest heaved as he glared at Dante with eyes full of poison. "You think she belongs to you now? You think you can just swoop in and take what's mine?" Dante lifted his head slowly, turning toward Jason with the calmness of a man used to violence, a man who didn't need to shout to threaten. His voice, when it came, was quiet enough to be swallowed by the rain, but the coldness in it made Mia shiver. "She was never yours." Jason laughed, though the sound cracked with fear when Dante stepped toward him. You have no idea what she and I have. You don't know anything about her. I know enough, Dante replied. I know she just begged for her life. I know you tried to take it. His fists clenched slowly at his sides, his knuckles whitening under the pressure. And I know what men like you deserve. Jason stumbled back, his bravado faltering as Dante advanced. The storm howled around them, lightning illuminating the rooftop in sharp flashes. Dante's shadow stretched long and intimidating, moving like a predator stalking its prey. Jason raised his hands defensively. It wasn't supposed to go that far, he spat. She made me angry. She pushed me. She always pushed me. Dante's expression hardened even more. She owes you nothing, he said, his voice dropping dangerously. And you're done breathing the same air as her. Before Jason could respond, Dante seized him by the collar with a speed that made Mia gasp. Jason's feet barely touched the ground as Dante slammed him back against a rooftop wall, the impact echoing through the storm. Jason's breath burst from his lungs in a choked gasp. Mia's heart raced as she watched Dante hold Jason pinned, his forearm pressed against the man's throat. Rain ran down their faces like tears from a sky mourning the violence below. You tried to kill her, Dante growled inches from Jason's face. You had one chance to walk away. You won't get another. Jason choked out a desperate sound. You don't get to decide that. She's mine. She always comes back. Mia flinched at his words. Something inside her snapped at hearing them again, those same poisonous claims she had spent months trying to outrun. But Dante didn't even blink. His gaze flicked to her briefly, as if checking she was listening. Mia, he called, his voice vibrating with restrained fury. Tell him. She froze for a second, thunder rumbling above her. Dante's eyes were waiting for her, urging her, grounding her. She stepped forward, despite her trembling legs, until she stood close enough that Jason could see her clearly. I am not yours, she said, her voice breaking but firm. I will never be yours. Not now. Not ever. Jason's face twisted, something between fury and heartbreak flickering through his eyes. After everything I did for you. You hurt me, Mia said, her tears mixing with the rain. You scared me. You destroyed every part of me that trusted you. That's not love, Jason. That's obsession. Jason's mouth opened, but Dante's grip tightened, cutting him off. You heard her, Dante said. And you will never go near her again. For a moment, Dante looked ready to end Jason entirely. His muscles coiled with rage, his jaw flexed, something savage rose in his eyes. Mia saw it, felt it, and fear, for Dante, not for herself, struck her heart. Dante, she whispered. He didn't respond. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Dante, please. Those two words reached him. He blinked slowly, the storm within him flickering. He turned his head slightly toward her, rain dripping from his lashes. Please don't, she said, her voice small and fragile but steady. Don't become like him. You're better than that. The rooftop fell silent except for the storm. Dante's grip loosened, inch by inch, until he finally released Jason, letting the man crumple to the wet concrete, coughing and gasping for breath. Dante didn't look at Jason again. Get him out of here, he ordered coldly. From the shadows beneath a rusted ventilation unit, two men stepped forward. Mia hadn't noticed them before, but they were clearly Dante's. Large, silent, deadly. They grabbed Jason without a word, dragging him across the rooftop. Jason screamed, cursed, begged, first at Dante, then at Mia, then at no one. But the storm swallowed his voice as he disappeared into the stairwell. Mia wrapped her arms around herself as the adrenaline drained from her body. The rooftop suddenly felt bigger, emptier, quieter. Dante turned back toward her. Gone was the fury. Gone was the monster the city feared. What remained was a man looking at her with something raw, something unexpectedly gentle. He walked toward her slowly, as if not wanting to frighten her, as if she were something precious that needed care. When he reached her, he lifted one hand and brushed the wet strands of hair from her face, his fingers surprisingly warm. You're safe now, he murmured again, softer this time. Mia exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her body leaned toward him instinctively, craving the warmth, the protection, the certainty he offered so naturally. For the first time in what felt like forever, she believed she was safe. Because Dante Romano, the man feared by everyone, had chosen to save her. And the look in his eyes told her he wasn't done protecting her. Not tonight, not ever. The night blurred into a haze of trembling breaths and aching limbs as Dante guided Mia down the narrow stairwell, his hand wrapped around hers with a firmness that steadied her. The rain still echoed through the building, tapping against broken windows and dripping from the ceiling like a slow, restless heartbeat. Mia's legs felt weak, her muscles quivering from fear and the shock of nearly falling to her death. Every few steps, Dante slowed, glancing back at her with quiet worry as if expecting her to collapse at any moment. She didn't collapse. She didn't because his presence felt like the only thing keeping her upright. His touch was warm despite the cold water dripping from their clothes. He didn't say a word as they moved down each flight of stairs, and the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It felt solid, protective, as though he was offering her the space to breathe without asking anything from her. When they finally reached the ground floor, the storm outside had weakened into a steady drizzle. Dante's car waited at the curb, its sleek black exterior glistening beneath the streetlights. One of his men stood beside it, opening the back door the moment Dante and Mia approached. Rain pooled at Mia's feet as she hesitated, suddenly aware that she was stepping into the car of a man whose reputation could make entire neighborhoods fall silent. But before fear could claw into her chest, Dante gently placed his hand on the small of her back. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't demanding. It was simply grounding. "It's warm inside," he said quietly. "You're freezing." She nodded, swallowing the tightness in her throat, and slid into the back seat. Dante followed her, shutting the door behind them. The warmth inside the car enveloped her instantly, making her realize how violently her body was shaking. Her soaked clothes clung to her skin, and her teeth began to chatter. Without a word, Dante shrugged off his jacket. It was heavy, dark, and still damp, but he placed it over her shoulders gently, adjusting it until she was covered. "You don't have to," she began, but he shook his head. "You're cold," he replied simply. "Just wear it." The car began to move, the tires slicing through shallow puddles as the city lights streaked across the windows. Mia leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. But even with them closed, the memory of the rooftop flashed in vivid fragments. Jason's smile. The edge of the building. Her own scream swallowed by the storm. And Dante's voice cutting through everything, pulling her back from a darkness she hadn't been ready to face. She opened her eyes again and glanced at him. He sat beside her, not pressed against her but close enough that she felt the warmth radiating from him. His wet shirt clung to his broad shoulders, and droplets of rain still slid down his neck. He looked forward, jaw tight, as though replaying the night in his mind. "Why were you there?" she asked softly, her voice trembling with exhaustion and confusion. "On the rooftop. How did you find me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers in the dim glow of the passing streetlights. She expected coldness or indifference, something that aligned with his reputation. But what she found instead surprised her. Concern. "I heard you were in danger," he said. "And I wasn't going to ignore that." Her brows furrowed. "But why? You don't even know me." Dante exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. "I know enough. I know Jason was trouble. I know he'd been following you. And I know he planned something tonight." His eyes softened just slightly. "I couldn't let it happen." She swallowed hard. "You saved my life. I wasn't going to let you die," he said quietly, almost painfully honest. "Not like that." The car grew silent again. Not heavy. Not uncomfortable. Just thoughtful. By the time they arrived at Dante's private clinic, Mia felt more like she was floating than walking. The building didn't look like a typical medical facility. It was discreet, dimly lit, and guarded by two men who stepped aside the moment they recognized Dante. Inside, soft lighting and clean floors greeted them, a sharp contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. A doctor rushed forward the moment Dante entered with Mia by his side. The man was older, with silver hair and gentle eyes, and he treated her with surprising kindness for someone working under a Mafia boss. Dante never left her side during the entire examination. He stood near the door, arms crossed, watching every movement with a level of attentiveness that made Mia's chest tighten. The doctor cleaned the scrapes on her arms and legs, checked her breathing, took her vitals, and asked gentle questions she answered through trembling lips. He told her she was lucky. Very lucky. A fall from that height would have been fatal. She nodded, but her gaze kept drifting back to Dante, who seemed carved from stillness, his expression unreadable but his presence unshiftable. At one point, when the doctor asked her to sit up, she winced, her muscles stiff and sore. Dante stepped forward immediately, his hand gently touching her back as if he had been waiting for that moment. "Careful," he murmured, his voice low and warm. "You've been through enough." Those words nearly broke her again, not because they frightened her, but because they felt sincere. Too sincere for someone like him. Hours passed in a blur. The storm faded into silence outside. The clinic lights dimmed. The doctor eventually left with instructions for her to rest, promising to return in the morning for a follow-up. Mia lay in the small but comfortable bed, wrapped in soft blankets, her body heavy with exhaustion. She thought Dante would leave then, that he would disappear back into his shadowed world and leave her in the care of his people. But he didn't. When she opened her eyes after drifting off for a short while, she found him sitting in a chair beside her bed, one elbow resting on the armrest and his head supported by his hand. His eyes were closed, though the tension in his posture made it clear he wasn't fully asleep. He looked different like this. Not fearsome, not intimidating, but strangely human, vulnerable, even. "Dante," she whispered, her voice barely audible. His eyes opened immediately, sharp and alert, as if he had been waiting for her voice. He straightened, leaning forward slightly. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Tired," she admitted. "Sore. You should rest more," he said gently. She looked at him for a long moment, taking in the man who had walked into a storm for her, who had caught her when she fell, who had stayed by her side tonight when no one else would have. Something warm grew in her chest, something she tried to push away but couldn't. "You didn't have to stay," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "Then why did you?" He held her gaze, the darkness in his eyes softening in a way she had never seen before. "Because I couldn't walk away. Not tonight." His voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Not from you." Her breath caught. Her heart stuttered. In that quiet room, beneath the soft glow of warm lights, Mia realized something she had never expected. The man sitting beside her wasn't just the Mafia boss the city feared. He was the only one who had shown up when her world shattered. And he was the only one who refused to leave, even after the danger was gone. A week passed before Mia felt steady enough to walk without holding onto the walls for support. The clinic had become strangely familiar, a safe pocket of silence tucked away from the chaos of the city. She spent the days recovering in a room that smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic, wrapped in blankets while nurses checked on her with quiet, respectful care. But no matter how peaceful the space was, what comforted her most was the man who never drifted far. Dante visited her every day. Not loudly, not dramatically. He came like a shadow slipping past the door, bringing warm food or clean clothes or just a quiet presence that grounded her. Sometimes he sat beside her, talking softly about nothing at all. Sometimes he said nothing, only watching her with a calm intensity she couldn't decipher. And sometimes, when she woke in the middle of the night from dreams of falling, he was sitting right where she left him, his eyes lifting to hers with a silent reassurance that chased the nightmares away. But tonight, for the first time since the rooftop, she felt strong enough to walk outside without leaning on anyone. The doctor had given her permission. Her bruises were fading, her breathing was steady, and she could finally look at the world without feeling it tilt beneath her feet. Dante arrived just after sunset, dressed in black as always, though tonight he seemed less like the feared Mafia boss and more like someone carrying a quiet weight inside him. He knocked once before entering her room, and when he saw her standing instead of lying down, his eyes widened subtly. "You're up," he said, and though the words were simple, there was something like relief tucked between them. "How do you feel?" "Better," Mia replied. "Stronger." He studied her for a moment, as if making sure she wasn't lying. When he was satisfied, he nodded. "Then come with me." She blinked. "Where?" "Somewhere quiet," he said. "I think you need it." She hesitated, not because she feared him but because the world outside felt so different now. Yet the way he extended his hand toward her, steady and patient, made the decision effortless. She placed her hand in his, and he guided her out of the clinic and into the cool evening air. The car ride was slow and peaceful. The storm was long gone, replaced by a calm sky faintly glowing with the last traces of daylight. Mia rested her cheek against the cool window, watching the city lights pass like fragments of a world she wasn't quite ready to return to. Dante glanced at her occasionally, but he didn't pressure her to speak. It was enough for him that she was here beside him. After some time, the car turned down a narrow road lined with towering trees. Their branches arched overhead, forming a quiet tunnel that whispered with the night breeze. At the end of the road, the river stretched wide and silent, catching the soft gold of the fading sun. The gentle sound of the water lapping at the shore gave the place a peacefulness that wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Dante stepped out first and opened her door. She took his hand and let him help her up. Together they walked toward the water, their steps slow and unhurried. The grass was cool beneath her feet, and the air smelled of damp earth and distant rain. Dante stopped at the edge of the riverbank and turned to face her. "Mia," he said softly, and her name on his lips felt like something rare, something careful. "I brought you here because I wanted you to breathe again." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the soft wind brush against her skin. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "I didn't know places like this existed in this city." "Most people don't," Dante replied. "But it's always been a place I go to when things get loud." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the faint shadows beneath his eyes, the lines of stress etched along his jaw, the weight he carried with such practiced silence. He had rescued her, protected her, stayed with her. But she wondered how often someone had done the same for him. "Why did you stay with me?" she asked quietly. He met her gaze, and something softened in his expression. "Because you needed someone," he said. "And for once, I wanted to be that someone." Her heart tightened. She took a step closer without thinking, drawn to him by an instinct she didn't fully understand. Dante didn't move away. If anything, he seemed to lean almost imperceptibly toward her, as though her presence pulled at him. "You talk like you're not used to people needing you," she said. A faint, humorless smile curved at his lips. "In my world, people don't need me. They fear me, or they want something from me." He paused, searching her face. "But you just needed someone to catch you." Her breath hitched. She remembered the moment she fell, the terror that froze her soul, the darkness swallowing everything, and the hand that had reached down through the storm like a lifeline sent from fate itself. "You didn't hesitate," she whispered. "You could have died. But you would have died," he said simply. And that wasn't an option. The sincerity of his words shook her. She didn't know how to respond. Instead, she looked down at their hands. His were large and scarred, holding more stories than he would ever tell her. Slowly, almost shyly, she slipped her fingers between his. Dante inhaled sharply, a small, surprised sound, as though he wasn't used to gentleness being offered to him freely. "Mia," he murmured, as if her name grounded him. She lifted her eyes. "You don't have to protect me out of obligation," she said softly. "You saved me." That was more than enough. His expression tightened, and he stepped closer until their foreheads were almost touching. "It's not obligation," he said, voice low, warm, and fierce. "I'm here because I want to be. Because something in me refuses to walk away from you." Her breath mingled with his, her pulse racing. The river's gentle sounds melted into the background. The warmth of his breath brushed her lips, and her heart stumbled. "Dante," she whispered, not in fear, but in something dangerously close to longing. He raised a hand and cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. She leaned into the touch without hesitation. He searched her face as though trying to read everything she wasn't saying out loud. "You've been through hell," he said softly. "You deserve someone who will keep you safe. Someone who will stay." Her eyes glistened. "And you think that's you?" His thumb brushed her cheek again, tenderly. "I think I want it to be." A tear slipped down her face, but it wasn't from pain. It was from the strange, beautiful ache swelling inside her chest. She rose onto her toes and rested her forehead against his. "Then stay," she whispered. Dante exhaled shakily, as if all the walls he had built in his life cracked in a single instant. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into his chest with a gentleness she had never expected from a man like him. She melted into him, letting the warmth of his embrace fill the hollow places inside her. No fear, no running, no shadows waiting to swallow her. Just him, solid, warm, unmoving. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting the world in soft twilight, Dante pressed his lips against her forehead, lingering there in a silent promise. "No one will ever hurt you again," he whispered. "Not while I'm breathing." Mia closed her eyes, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. And in that quiet, perfect moment, she knew something with absolute certainty. She hadn't been saved by a mafia boss. She had been saved by the only man who saw her fall and refused to let go. And from that moment on, their story wasn't about danger or fear or shadows. It was about the beginning of something neither of them ever expected, but both of them were willing to fight for. Together.